Well, thank you, Fiona, and thank you all of you for coming here to London. As the Prime Minister will have talked about, we have a challenge in the coalition government to make sure our economy is growing, but also growing sustainably. And I want to talk about that, and particularly the infrastructure challenge and the energy infrastructure challenge. But I first, in case you don't know, want to tell you that I'm a Liberal Democrat. We've got a coalition here between Liberal Democrats and Conservatives. And I think that's one of the strengths of this government, because our policies on infrastructure, on energy and elsewhere are shared across two parties. And actually it's more significant than that when you listen to debates in the House of Commons on this area, because the Labour opposition agrees with what we're doing. And that political consensus has been worked at, and I think that's really important for people coming from abroad to understand those political connections, because I think that's important. Of course, there are debates about how we turn around our macro position, the debates about deficit reduction, austerity, and what's the right thing to do there. But one of the areas where there's real consensus is on the supply side, and the Prime Minister will have talked about our tax reforms, which we think are making the UK attractive, our employment law reforms. We have a very, very flexible labour market, the support we're giving to exporters, to R&D research, to education skills agenda. And I think that's why, if you look at the recent Ernst & Young survey of multinationals, they found that 40 multinationals are thinking about relocating their headquarters to the United Kingdom because of the supply side reforms that this government has been making. And I think that's real evidence that we are making the UK an attractive place to come to. But in that supply side story, in that long-term economic sustainable growth story, infrastructure is critical. And we have a tradition in this country of building lots of infrastructure. Unfortunately, most of that tradition is from the Victorians. And one of the complaints that people have had over the years when they've come to the UK is that our infrastructure has looked a little tired. And it is true, if you look at the World Economic Forum, they place the UK 24th for the quality of our infrastructure. And that, frankly, isn't good enough. But it shows our challenge and it shows the opportunity. And I think we have a fantastic opportunity. And the government's gone about that in a number of ways. Even though we've made tough decisions on the budget, our capital budgets have actually been supported far more. So to make sure we are taking long-term decisions with public expenditure to make sure it's going in the right way. And for the first time, we've created a cabinet subcommittee looking at national infrastructure, creating a national infrastructure plan that's brought together over £250 billion worth of infrastructure opportunities, and making sure that as ministers we are pushing forward priority projects, making sure they don't get stuck in the system. And that focus on getting that infrastructure investment, I think, has never happened before, certainly not in living memory. But my responsibility is on energy infrastructure. And when you look at the UK's infrastructure needs, nearly half of the infrastructure needs are in energy. And that's partly because we've got a lot of our energy generation and our energy networks that are getting to the end of their normal lifetime. So between now and 2020, 20% of our energy generation is going to come offline. That's some of the coal plants and some of the old nuclear plants coming offline. So we've got to replace that just to stand still. But we've also got the transition to the low-carbon economy, the sustainable growth agenda, where we're investing in low-carbon electricity generation, new nuclear, carbon capture and storage, and renewables in their many forms. Offshore wind, of course, leading, but also onshore biomass, solar, and so on. So we think there's a massive opportunity, and just between now and 2020, we, outside the oil and gas sector, which is of course another very good story, but outside the oil and gas sector, we believe there is £110 billion of investment that we need to attract. And we know if we're going to do that, to meet that challenge, to upgrade the UK's infrastructure, and particularly energy infrastructure, we've got to make sure that investors want to come here. So our driving force is to make sure that what we're doing creates a predictable framework, a long-term framework, a stable framework, backed by that political consensus that I've talked about, backed by a new legal framework. We're putting an energy bill through the House of Commons, which has got, again, cross-party support, and that's reforming our electricity market so that we can be the world's first ever low-carbon electricity market. And that will give legal certainty, and behind that, we've also got financial certainty, because what you've seen in a number of other countries is they haven't done their sums, and they get to a point and they realize that they can't afford something, and there's a big break on. Well, we've learnt those lessons, so we've done our sums, we've got agreement across government, we understand the impact on consumer bills of our policies going way into the future, and through something called the Levy Control Framework, we've got a budgetary structure. So we think, whether it's on the politics, on the law, or on the finances, we've created a framework which gives investors what they need. And I think we're seeing the fruits of that. The offshore wind investments we're seeing have placed the UK as the leading country for offshore wind investment. With the Green Investment Bank, Sean Kingsbury's team, we're helping people get investing into offshore wind and indeed other forms of energy generation. Our agreement between National Grid, the grid operator, and our energy regulator, Ofgem, has given a really clear picture for network investment between now and the end of the decade. And I hope you will be able to see in due course, I can't give a running commentary on it, but that we will have agreed a deal for the first new nuclear reactors in the UK for a very long time. So I think all those signs are, I think, are very strong, and they feed into what we are trying to do as a coalition government to get that sustainable growth, that sustainable investment. And I want to also pay tribute to the Treasury, because they have been very innovative in the way they are supporting infrastructure. Lord Dighton will talk more about this, no doubt, but the Treasury infrastructure guarantees are something we've never seen before, but they support both what my department's trying to do in energy and the wider infrastructure picture. So I hope you've already realised you've got an attractive place to invest. And I hope as a result of your networking, your discussions with ministers like myself, but also our officials, you'll feel ready to invest. And we want to make sure this is the best place, not just in Europe, but in the world, to invest in infrastructure and in energy. Thank you very much. I'm now taking questions, so someone's going to tell me who to ask. So number one, if you can stand up, sir, and tell us who you are.
Secretary of State Peter Mather from BP. Thank you for that. You didn't specifically reference the North Sea, and I suppose I just wanted to make a point and then ask a question. I suppose the point is, of course, the North Sea is a massive area of success for the UK over many years, 450,000 jobs, and at the moment we're seeing a bit of a renaissance, new investment going in. We have put in about £10 billion, as you know, recently, just BP alone. I wondered if you could comment on how you see the North Sea playing a role going forward.
You're right to pull me up on that. It's probably because I had my first meeting today at a breakfast with UK oil and gas industry, so I sort of felt I've done oil and gas today. But you're right, it's a huge success story. It's an industry that's been one of the leading success stories of the British economy for decades. It's the biggest industrial investor, and we've seen UK companies cut their teeth in the North Sea and go and export around the world. So we're very proud of that industry. And you're right, because of the things I think this government has done with tax allowances, with our industrial strategy for the oil and gas sector, we are seeing a big increase in investment as you describe. What do we see it as a future within the energy mix? A massive future. Yes, of course we are making this transition to low carbon, but that is not something that happens overnight. It happens over decades. You know, the whole thing about energy infrastructure investment is it's 20, 30, 40, 50 years long. Actually, in terms of a nuclear power station, when you add in 40 years of decommissioning, it's 100 years long. You know, these are long timescales. And so we believe that oil and gas will play a major part in the UK energy mix and the UK economy for decades to come.
Hi, Paul Massara from RWE Power. As you know, Secretary of State, we've invested £5 billion over the last 6 years and employed 12,000 people here. We regard the UK as a great place to invest. We think that the energy bill is giving us certainty and clarity that we need. Unfortunately, I think you realise that many of the utilities' balance sheets have been squeezed or in tight positions. And therefore, although we see the market as being very attractive, I think we're much more interested to see how we can now partner with other capital funders to combine together to meet this 110 billion. And we just wondered, the question really is, do you think there's more that we can do with companies and with government to make sure that we get that capital aligned and get constructing?
Well, Paul, yes, and the conference today is part of that effort. But we are keen in DEC to work with individual consortia who want to put together the packages, and we want to get out this message, the one you've just described. We know we're competing for capital across the world. You know that. And it is true that some of the utility companies in Europe and the UK have had in the past healthier balance sheets than they've got now. So we're going to see different models for investment. We'll see refinancing after construction. We'll see a whole range of different approaches. And we're absolutely committed, both in DEC, the Treasury, the Green Investment Bank, and elsewhere, to try to make that happen.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I'm from the State Oil Fund of Azerbaijan. The UK government recently contributed to the Climate Catalyst Fund, along with the IFC, Canada and Azerbaijan, and I think that this is one of the most successful attempts in unlocking the long-term capital in order to direct them towards solving the climate change issues. Do you plan this kind of initiatives in the future?
Yes, I mean, the climate change agenda is both one that we have to take seriously in the UK, in the EU and globally. And our work with other countries, particularly in developing countries, I think is recognised as some of the leading work. We work with Germany and Norway and the United States and a few other countries who are, I think, leading the way in that. And we have an international climate fund of 2.9 billion in the last spending review that goes up to 2015 in order to be able to make those partnerships and to try to get that investment in those countries that need to develop in a sustainable way, in a low carbon way, and can learn the mistakes of the developed world and just as we've seen in mobile telephony, jump. And some of the opportunities in solar in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, are fantastic and very exciting. And we will certainly be playing our part with others to do just that. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm getting some stares and some nods, which tells me I'm running over time, and we'll have to move on. So can I thank you for listening, thank you for those questions, and hope you enjoy the rest of the day.